So just to be abundantly clear, coronavirus has been in play as a biological weapon agent since 1966. In 1990, Pfizer filed the first patent on a vaccine for coronavirus. Is it any wonder that Pfizer was in the game and knew that it was going to actually somehow mysteriously show up with a vaccine? Oh,
and they told Trump, we made it in 2 days.
Yeah, they had a patent in 1990.
Doc, you've got the floor. And I'm not going to interrupt you. Keep going, keep going.
No, it's all good. Because what happened in 1999 is Ralph Barich's coronavirus modification and manipulation program took what used to be a respiratory and a gastrointestinal bug and turned it into something that would actually create cardiomyopathy in rabbits. And in 2002, that gave rise to the patent that was filed called the Infectious Replication Defective Clone of Coronavirus. Now, we have a commercially interested group of sociopaths who want to make money while killing people. That's the bottom line.
And creating a global control grid for the social credit score out of the vaccine passport.
No question, but the reason why that's important, remember, is if you can weaponize healthcare, if you can weaponize the idea that you need to do something in the interest of surviving.
That's a victorious beachhead.
It's a phenomenal beachhead. You get behavior modification, you get compliance, you get all sorts of other things. They knew on September 18th, 2019, that they were going to release a lethal respiratory pathogen. They used the word lethal. They knew it was deadly. They knew it was going to kill people. And let's, for the sake
So it's not of a wet lab or a wet market. It didn't happen on accident.
China virus.
It was all pre-programmed.
It wasn't a China virus. Remember that in 2016, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, there is a very, very, very clear statement that says WIV1 is poised for human emergence. Rand Paul won't go there, and the House Select Committee won't go there, and they won't.
Well, where is there? Explain it.
Well, there is. Nobody wants to admit that the United States government is actually funding these programs and laundering these programs through universities in very important electoral locations around the world. People tell me about election integrity and election reform. Let's get really clear. Why is it that Texas? Why is it that North Carolina? Why is it that Virginia? Why is it that all of these states, Tennessee, Kentucky, why is it that for some mysterious reason, none of the senators and none of the congressmen from these places have the audacity to actually go, hey, hold on a minute. I think our university is actually running a biological weapons program.
I'm sick of playing games with these Republicans.
18 U.S. Code Section 1001, lying to Congress. You know what's a terrible thing? That's not a, hey, you shouldn't do it. That's a law. And it is equally false. Let's get really precise on this. It's equally false for a congressman or a senator to continue to perpetrate a lie in Congress about the Wuhan virus and the leak, and was it a lab leak, and was it this or that. It's equally problematic for an elected official to lie in Congress as it is for a Supreme Court justice like Sotomayor, who lied about the pathology associated with coronavirus, which allegedly justified why we should have compulsory vaccinations for healthcare providers. And it's equally problematic for Fauci to lie and say he didn't do gain-of-function moratorium.
And now they're coming back with bird flu. We have the initiative now. All the top talk show hosts, you reach millions a day. All the top people are talking about liberty. Humans are hungry for liberty. We can win this thing.
That's exactly right.
But we can't lie to ourselves about what we're up against.
That's exactly right. And once again, this is World War III. That's not hyperbole. It just comes in a different form. Our reward is not palaces, not gold streets, not anything else. Our reward is to hear our name, David. Well done.
Great job, brother. Thank you, sir. Many years ago, I coined the term 360 win. That's another way of saying it's a non-zero sum game. When you have a sum game, it's a pizza, there's only so many pieces, it doesn't get bigger. But if something is symbiotic, if something empowers everybody involved with it, it is a 360 win. When you visit drjonesnaturals.com, you're not just supporting our broadcast by getting the products, you're getting game-changing products that really really work and are amazing. All of the nano silver products, incredible products like Next Level Foundational Energy, products like Top Brain, an incredible nootropic, Rocket Rest, an incredible natural sleep aid, and dozens of other products not available at InfoWarsStore.com or exclusively available at drjonesnaturals.com. And they keep the show on the air, and they're amazing, a 360 win. So please follow the links below to drjonesnaturals.com, and I thank you for your support. And for breaking news and updates, be sure and follow me at Real Alex Jones here on X.
Viene una tormenta!
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming in.
I know.
We told you what was going to happen, and it did. Now we're telling you what's coming. At Real Alex Jones on X.
Dr. David E. Martin is our guest in studio right now, ladies and gentlemen. We're doing the deep dive on the COVID tyranny.
InfoWars, tomorrow's news today.
Well, it's the issue of our age. COVID, where did it come from? What's happening with the shots, the mass death, what's really happening? And long before COVID was released, Dr. David E. Martin, founder and chairman of MCAM Inc., the international leader in innovation, finance, trade, and intangible asset finance, was exposing their plan with the coronavirus. He's one of the big guests I've wanted to get. 2 years ago, we had him. I had a family emergency, didn't get him on, but he came to the legislature in Texas today for an emergency meeting with the next big move against the tyrants. And so in the next hour and a half, he's about to have the floor here to do a major, just like me, he's got all the documents right there, ready to cover it. So I'm gonna try to shut up and let him host the show here, davidmartin.world. An amazing time. And he said, hey, you finally want me? I'm in Texas. And I'm like, great, I want a remote. That's good. He goes, no, I'm here. And I said, let me guess, you're at the legislature talking about criminal charges. He said, well, yeah, I'll talk about it. So you've got Missouri coming out with major civil action. You've got the Ninth Circuit coming out last week or 2 weeks ago now and saying it's not a vaccine because they're covered by the 86 law unless they're involved in fraud. But you're the real expert. So I'm going to try to shut up now because you're one of the most requested guests from listeners and try to give you the floor to talk about 3+ years into the shot, 4 years into the virus, where we are. Thank you so much for being here. And again, you used to inspect, I guess, biological weapons. That's why, just like one of the other few guys that got all this, because you were there 4 years ago, the first person, along with Francis Boyle, who wrote the U.S. biological weapons law, because I tracked it back. You were the first two guys in like January 2020 that cracked the code. And now we've got a very clear picture. So thanks for being here. I'm going to really try to shut up because I love to add things. I love to talk and give you the floor, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. David E. Martin.
Alex, it's awesome to be here, and thank you. And listen, you know what I love about this is we've actually needed to talk for a long time, but the way things work, you know, fate had it that I needed to be in Austin, Texas, so here we are. Listen, there's a couple things that are actually really important, and this is where we have to actually start with some really simple premises. This entire exercise over the last 4.5 years was willfully misleading the population into taking something through coercion that would not have otherwise ever been accepted. We need to be really clear on the fact we're going to use some terms that piss people off, but that's okay. And I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out for you. Since 2002, there has not been a coronavirus. There has been an engineered pathogen engineered by Ralph Barrick at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where in 2002, he patented the infectious replication defective clone of coronavirus. And let's get really clear about this, because everybody sits there and says, well, yeah, but my aunt, my uncle, I got sick when something happened. Let's be abundantly clear. The coronavirus that has been branded to be part of COVID-19 does not exist. What does exist is a pathogen modeled off of properties of what was once upon a time isolated as coronavirus, but properties of it that increased its pathogenicity, increased its toxicity, but, are you ready for this? Decreased its transmissibility. And Alex, this is the part that really pisses me off. Because we've been told that all the interventions, everything that we were supposed to do was, lockdown, face mask, separate, distance this, vaccinate that, all based on an engineering exercise that, are you ready for this? In 2002 was patented to be non-transmissible. Now, not surprisingly, if you go back and look at 2002, 2003, when we heard SARS 1.0 happen, we were told that we were all supposed to die, just like we were supposed to all die of, swine flu. We were all supposed to die of avian influenza. We were all supposed to die of all these other pathogens. Ironically, SARS 1.0 in 2002 going into 2003 didn't kill us all. In fact, it didn't kill hardly anybody. And that's because the patented weapon was an infectious replication defective clone derived from the coronavirus model. But it was not a pathogen of nature. And it has never been a pathogen of nature since 2002. So number one, let's start with that. But let's go to number two. Number two is a vaccine. And this is where even the communities in the health freedom movement get into vigorous arguments with me. A vaccine, by the definition established in the 1986 Act, and by the way, just to be abundantly clear, it is actually 26 U.S. Code Section 4132A2, right? What is a vaccine? It means a substance designed to be administered to a human being for the prevention of one or more diseases. Alex, prevention of one or more diseases. Did any of these injections prevent a damn thing? That's right. Everyone knows this, including, by the way, Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. They all knew that this would not prevent anything. And by the way, we've been told, well, the CDC administratively changed the term vaccination. And other people administratively changed the term vaccination. Here's a tiny little problem. They don't have the authority to administratively change it. The law dictates what a vaccination is, and nothing that was done during the entire pandemic constituted vaccination by the legal definition. And let's unpack that for 1 second, because here's what happened. Based on a set of code that Ralph Barrick sent to the Vaccine Research Center in November of 2019, and you heard me say that date correctly, November 2019, that's allegedly before patient 1.0 in Wuhan. Ralph Barrick sent a sequence to the Vaccine Research Center, and it was not for the coronavirus, and it was not for the coronavirus vaccine. It was for the mRNA that was used to instruct the human body to make a scheduled pathogen. Let me say that again. To make a scheduled pathogen. What they did was they said, what we're going to do is we're going to inject into the arms of billions of people the instructions to turn each individual into a bioweapons factory. And you could say, well, that's hyperbole, Dave. Don't call it a bioweapons factory, except here's the tiny little problem. Under 18 U.S. code, that's exactly what it is. If you instruct a person to make a scheduled toxin, you, in fact, are a biological weapons manufacturer. And every single person that took the shot, let's be really clear, every single person that took the shot became the manufacturer of a synthetic spike protein associated with the coronavirus model. And this is where people like Aaron Siri will say, well, hold on a second, Dave. There's all kinds of vaccinations that do all kinds of other things. And that's true. He's right up to a point. But the difference between this and everything that's been done before is really simple. In the case of mRNA, there are two distinctions that are absolutely unique to the COVID pandemic. Number one, we actually are creating the mechanism to instruct the body to manufacture a toxin. This is not to trigger an immune response. We hope that, by the way, there will be an immune response after the fact. But the problem is, what is actually injected is the instructions to make the pathogen. Number one. And number two, the response is actually a hopeful response that failed to consider two very critical things. Number one, the lipid nanoparticle in which the shot was delivered actually is also a toxin. So the bad news is we're going to deliver it as a toxin. And then the worst part about it is that we actually introduced a thing called pseudouridine. And pseudouridine in 2018 was published to be a pro-cancer agent, meaning that it actually shuts down the body's natural response to how we actually recognize tumors and suppress tumors. And we actually included pseudouridine in every single one of the mRNA shots to stabilize the mRNA so that it actually stayed in the human body longer to achieve its effect.
And doctor, I want you to go through all this the way you want, but dumb it down for me, because I'm a pretty smart guy. And when I started hearing you 3-4 years ago, I talked to other experts, seen peace here, emails about COVID-19, how they already had it on the shelf, Chapel Hill and Obama and the scandal in 2014. And maybe we get to one. So when I hear you, I know it's all true because I've read it and seen it, but nobody puts it together like you. And you do a great job at Congress and legislatures and the EU, doing a great job laying it out. But first, do me a favor, dumb it down, the premise up front of what it's really about, and then lay it out.
Well, so the premise is really simple. They actually said, and by the way, it's best to read the criminals in their own words. This was published February 12, 2016 in the National Academy of Sciences, National Library of Medicine. Until an infectious disease crisis is very real, present, and at an emergency threshold that is largely ignored to sustain the funding base beyond the crisis, we need to increase the public understanding of the need for medical countermeasures, such as a pan-influenza or a pan-coronavirus vaccine. Now, remember the date. This is 2015.
And that's why Fauci, right when Trump got elected, said he'll be challenged by a major new virus.
We actually, here it is, but here comes the kicker. A key driver is the media, and the economics will follow the hype. We need to use that hype to our advantage to get to the real issues. Investors will respond if they see profit at the end of the process. Now,
so this is all master planned.
Master planned. And who did the master plan? Well, good news is we have that one too. The master plan was done by none other than the Wellcome Trust, NIAID, Anthony Fauci, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, specifically Dr. Chris Elias, Dr. Gao from the CDC of the People's Republic of China, and a whole host of others who sit on what's called the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. And Alex, you know what they said in September 18th, 2019? And for those of you not familiar with calendars, because I'm going to dumb this thing down, September came before December in 2019.
Before the virus.
Yeah, you'd think so. Well, here's a tiny little problem. They said on September 18th, 2019, that by September 20 of 2020, the world would accept a universal vaccine. And not only would they accept a universal vaccine, let's get abundantly clear what they said. They would do so in response, and by the way, it is printed. You can't unsee this. It's on page 8 of the book, The World at Risk. They said that there was going to be an accidental or deliberate release of a lethal respiratory pathogen. And this is where we have to cross the line to make it really simple. To advance the commercial and social interests of psychopaths that wanted to kill human beings for the sake of their agenda, they decided to unleash a lethal respiratory pathogen on the population, so the population would be bamboozled into taking an mRNA shot which would permanently alter their human condition.
And by the way, start over, because you've done the best job, and it's true, out of everybody. You've done the best job at going back to the pre-documents. I'm not a rocket scientist, but we played the clips of Fauci 2018-19 on C-SPAN with all the federal regulators going, there's going to be a big thing that blows up the old system, and we're going to probably use a bird flu to totally take control, put mRNA in you. I mean, why have they been so arrogant in their admissions that you've done the best job organizing?
So I think it's really simple. I think sociopaths, like mass murderers, like serial killers, like to taunt you. They actually like to up the ante. They like to go, I'm even going to tell you what I'm going to do.
Yeah, we know psychopaths love to monologue.
They love it. And so what you've got is a situation where they're actually telling you it's going to happen. They're telling you how it's going to happen. They actually are financing, they're projecting in Event 201 in October of 2019. In Event 201, they actually had all of the promo materials, the N95 masks, the social media shutdown, the how we're going to intervene.
Social distancing. And SPARS predicts it also.
They made it all up, right? So it's all out in front of you. And who was the funder of that? Well, it turns out, once again, the antitrust conspirator, none other than, are you ready for this? Dustin Moskowitz, co-founder of Facebook, the name that you should all know, but
and Google's heavily invested.
Yeah, but the bigger thing, here's the thing. When Dustin Moskowitz wrote the check for Event 201, he actually got the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, he got Johns Hopkins University, and he got the World Economic Forum to all say that they were collaborating as co-sponsors of Event 201. But the check writer was Open Philanthropy. The check writer was a vested interest Facebook co-founder who mysteriously had all of the resources to fact check people like me who tried to say, hey, world, there's something coming. And guess what? Facebook mysteriously was able to anticipate that I was going to be the one commenting on this. So we have...
So they've wargamed this.
They wargamed this so well. But
that's a two-way street, though.
Wars, right?
Because you create a war game, it's great for you, but now we can war game it back.
That is exactly right. And what's happening right now, unfortunately for them, is they thought they had prevailed. They really did. And it was not until, by the way, the Ninth Circuit that just actually issued a ruling a week and a half ago. It wasn't until the Ninth Circuit came out and said, hold on a minute. Everybody's been calling this thing a vaccination. Everybody's been calling this a public health emergency. Everybody's been calling this a public health intervention to make sure that we don't transmit disease, because we know that we were supposed to get the shot so that we didn't get grandma sick, and we were supposed to get the shot so that we didn't get healthcare workers sick, and we didn't get restaurateurs sick, and we didn't get the public sick. Well, here's the tiny little problem. The shot was never going to do that. They knew it. Pfizer knew it. Moderna knew it. Everybody knew it. They knew that what they were going to do was actually allegedly decrease hospitalizations. But when they designed the clinical trial, they also knew that the thing they were injecting into people was lethal. And so here's a little tiny problem. We changed the definition of vaccination, no kidding, and we changed the definition of an adverse event following vaccination in 2018 and 2019 so that legally there was no adverse event. If you got the shot and fell over dead, that was not an adverse event. Isn't that interesting? Death, not an adverse event. You literally get the shot, you keel over dead because you actually died of COVID because you weren't vaccinated until 14 days after the second injection.
Well, you're the expert at putting it all together, so let me skip ahead. Give us the conclusion for people. Then I want you to walk through all the documents. I don't think it's going well. I think you just said that. Obviously, it's blowing up their face. What were they actually planning with this power grab?
Well, listen, let's get really, really clear. 2028 is a nightmare for the world. And it's a nightmare for the world because we actually have a convergence of a bunch of things. Our fiscal policy that's totally mismanaged, the collapse of the Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid pension funds. Giant surprise. Who did we actually inject first? Oh, that's right, the 65-year-old.
So they need a global emergency to cover up what's coming.
That's exactly right. And to preempt by death the people who inconveniently will be in the way when we find out that Social Security...
So it's Logan's Run. They literally are trying to get rid of the old...
Absolutely.
Keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt.
And listen, I mean, Bill Gates in 2011, 2012, when the first global vaccination program was launched by the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board, Bill Gates actually said that a successful vaccination program would decrease the population by his estimate of 10%.
And he said we must have depopulation to save the economy.
Exactly.
Wow.
So here we go.
So they're telling you.
So do the math. Do the math. And this isn't hard math. There's 8 billion people on Earth. He was actually carelessly suggesting that 800 million people, 800 million people, not, by the way, let's not talk about...
It was a TED TV, very cavalier.
Right. 800 million people need to be shoved off the planet by 2028.
Wow.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
If that number doesn't actually wake you up, and people keep saying, well, nobody could be that bad, right? Nobody could be that nefarious. Well, the answer is not only can they, but it's your reflex that says that that could not be possible.
They made them do it.
That is the reason why they're doing it. So what we're trying to do...
The naivete is the reason they made the move.
Exactly right. And so where we are is in a world where right now political theater is happening. Many of you have celebrated, unfortunately, things like the lawsuits that have been filed against Pfizer and the COVID Select Committee in the House of Representatives. But here's a little tiny problem, and I'm going to go ahead and put this little problem on air so that we can actually increase the amount that this is a problem for the House COVID Select Committee. I have right here in my hand the October 21, 2014 letter directed from NIAID, that's Anthony Fauci's program, to Sherry Settle at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I want to go into a little bit of detail on this because this was during the gain-of-function moratorium. And during the gain-of-function moratorium, Sherry Settle at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Ralph Barrick's program administrator, was told that the gain-of-function studies that he was doing were actually subject to the gain-of-function moratorium, but not only was he told in the final paragraph of the letter, as your grant is currently funded, this pause is voluntary. Alex, if you had a mandatory, I don't know, moratorium, and then you found out that a moratorium was voluntary, I don't know what world you live in, but it feels like that's not a moratorium. It feels like if you're telling somebody you could stop, but not only could you go ahead, it turns out that the official statement was that any program that was already being funded was allowed to keep going. And most people would look at that and say, okay, is that really a big deal? Well, it turns out that it is a big deal because the person who received that particular notice was the person who in 2005, June of 2005, at the birth of the PrEP Act, actually said synthetic coronaviruses were biological warfare enabling technology. Biological warfare enabling technology. Does that sound like public health to you? Does that sound like something that we should be excited about? Or is there an outside chance that if we actually are funding a guy who's actually saying this is biological warfare enabling technology, this is not my words, this is his presentation to the DARPA MITRE conference.
And Dr. Martin, let me just stop because I've watched probably 300 of your videos.
Yep.
I've watched all these interviews. Let's start over here because this is very interesting. We talked about who you are. I looked you up, everything you say you are. How are you already aware of this, as you said, for decades coming?
Yeah.
Spend a few minutes on yourself. You never do that.
I don't, because I'm actually trying to save this country. So
no, but people want to know who this guy is.
No, that's fair. And so
you're really interesting. People want to hear it.
Why do we know this? In the 1990s, Mosaic Technologies, the company I started, did a lot of work in treaty-restricted technology transfer. And what that just means in plain English is there were a bunch of offensive military technologies that were developed around the world, and my company was used by the United States government to help us access technologies that were of strategic defense interest and strategic commercial interest to the United States. But because of ITAR rules, because of all kinds of other things, they couldn't be freely moved. So my company was about civilianizing technology so that it could be exported. That got us into a bunch of places where we got to see biological and chemical weapons labs around the world. So that's how I got into it in the first place.
So it's just from pure work you learned about it?
Yeah, it was the company I started. But in 1998, an interesting thing happened. Because we set up a company called MCAM, which is the company I continue to run today, because we set up MCAM, we were asked by the government, again, to provide a mechanism where banks could actually get credit for intangible asset collateral. That's a big word. Let's unpack it. Patents, copyrights, trademarks, anything.
And that's how you see them listing viruses they've developed.
Right.
I'll explain it.
No, that's
so you're seeing them list these weapons.
We are literally watching in real time. We are watching in real time as people file patents, as people get grants, as people do collaborations, as corporations get involved in illicit activities. We're watching.
So you're not following the money. You are the money.
We are the money. And in 168 countries. So
total surveillance.
What do I see? I see the world. And here's where the problem kicks in. We set our systems to monitor the 68 scheduled pathogens, which are part of the biological weapons arsenal of the world. So anytime anything happened, a scientific publication came out, a patent was filed, a grant was filed, anything else, that popped up in our system. So we were flagging these things. The first time we wrote about...
As a government contractor.
Well, as contracting to the government, our contracts were with the Commerce Department and the Treasury Department because we did a whole bunch of investigations in criminal activities. But our work on biological weapons surveillance actually kicked into full gear in 2003. And the reason for that was that in 2001, after the anthrax scare, most people forget that, the anthrax scare of September 28th of 2001, which was when all of us actually found out that the United States government attacked itself, right? Anthrax came out of a U.S. lab and then went into the mail and then went into circulation. And that terror attack in 2001
Fort Detrick
came out of the fort. And what happened with that is we began the investigations for that, ultimately getting the world to realize that the reason why the anthrax attack happened and the reason why the SARS event happened in 2003 was so that we would get to the PrEP Act. And a lot of people don't understand this linkage, but let's make it abundantly clear. The reason why we needed the PrEP Act is because the manufacturers of vaccines in 1986 got the childhood vaccines covered under their immunity shield, which is what they appointed Fauci to his role to get as an outcome. But the problem is, as the term vaccination changed, as we decided to inject people with all kinds of other things, which began in earnest in the early 1990s, what we needed to do was we needed to extend that liability protection so that it would cover adult injections, specifically in the wake of the Gulf War, Gulf War I. We had to actually figure out how to get that liability protection associated with adult injections. And as a result of that, we needed to create the illusion of pandemics to get people to give up their liberty in 2005 in the PrEP Act. The whole reason for SARS 1.0 and the whole reason for the anthrax attack was to get commercial liability protections at the cost of civil liberties. That's why we did it. And as a country, we sat back and did nothing. And I'm sitting there banging on pots and pans, trying to get people to pay attention that there are real weapons coming.
I remember, what was it, like 30,000 troops died from anthrax shot or something?
Oh, yeah. In fact, we have the Gulf War syndrome that to this day, the Veterans Administration is allowing veterans to suffer and die with indifference because we are unwilling to actually acknowledge what were the multivalent injections that went into people during the Gulf War I, II, during the allegedly Desert Storm and Operation Iraq Freedom and all of the other
Sure, so I interrupted going back to your roots.
No, that's all right.
It's interesting. Now I interrupt you. We got an hour left. You're gracious to be here. So get back into what happened with COVID and where we're going.
Yeah, so back to the motivation. And Alex, we have to call it what it is. The motivation was we have a commercially interested group of sociopaths who want to make money while killing people. That's the bottom line.
And creating a global control grid for the social credit score out of the vaccine passport.
No question, but the reason why that's important, remember, is if you can weaponize healthcare, if you can weaponize the idea that you need to do something in the interest of surviving.
That's a victorious beachhead.
It's a phenomenal beachhead. You get behavior modification, you get compliance, you get all sorts of other things. And the key thing is, all of this lives inside of the deceptive medical practices programs where every single word associated with this pandemic, the word virus, the word vaccination, the word infection, every single one of these words had to be changed to deceive the population and coerce them to take something that they would not otherwise take.
So this is the globalist coup. I remember decades ago, the UN documents leaked when Lou Dobbs got him at CNN, when he was the head of CNN. They said, we're going to use Aziz X to take over the world.
That's exactly right. And they told us this, people. This is not a new thing. So there are 8 criminal counts in the world, 8 criminal counts of activities that are associated with this particular pandemic. And let's go through them just so we actually have them. The criminal counts are 18 U.S. Code, acts of domestic terrorism resulting in the death of Americans. Why would I say that that was what happened? Well, let's get really clear. I say it because it turns out that they knew on September 18th, 2019, that they were going to release a lethal respiratory pathogen. They used the word lethal. They knew it was deadly. They knew it was going to kill people. And let's, for the sake
So it's not of a wet lab or a wet market. It didn't happen on accident.
The China virus.
It was all pre-programmed.
It wasn't a China virus. Remember that in 2016, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, there is a very, very, very clear statement that says WIV1 is poised for human emergence. Alex, you want to guess what WIV1 is in 2016? It's the Wuhan Institute of Virology Virus 1. But guess where that paper was done, and guess where that paper was published? That paper was published at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, not in Wuhan, China. As a matter of fact, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill impaneled an institutional review board to review the ethics of the study, and then they impaneled a second review board to review the ethics of breaking the law. And nobody's talking about this.
The ethics of gain of function.
No, the ethics of overriding the law that said that they should not be doing gain of function during the moratorium.
Sure, and that's why it's ridiculous. Because you have all the documents, and I've read Fauci sends emails years ago, we're doing gain of function.
Right. And then in front of people like Rand Paul, who somehow can't seem to lay his hands on the letter that I just showed you.
By the way, it's important to criticize him. I want to think he's a good guy, but he's as smart as you or I, or probably smarter than me, might be smart as you. He literally won't go there.
That's exactly right.
What's going on?
Well, listen.
You've called him out. Let's do that right now.
Rand Paul won't go there, and the House Select Committee won't go there, and they won't.
Well, where is there? Explain it.
Well, there is that, listen, since the 1960s and early 1970s, we actually said that we weren't going to subscribe to the Nuremberg Code. Now, that's interesting given the fact that the United States was the Chief Justice for Nuremberg. So ironic that we actually come up with the international law and then we go, we don't want to actually follow that law because we want to have our own covert programs. So we actually went ahead and developed our own international code. This is where Francis Boyle's work comes in, because his very important work was to say, well, hold on a second, we should actually have laws against biological weapons in this country. And so his work coming up with 18 U.S. code was very critical to say, we're not going to adopt Nuremberg, but we are going to at least say that we shouldn't do biological weapons. That's a good thing. But here comes the kicker. Nobody wants to admit that the United States government is actually funding these programs and laundering these programs through universities in very important electoral locations around the world. People tell me about election integrity and election reform. Let's get really clear. Why is it that Texas, why is it that North Carolina, why is it that Virginia, why is it that all of these states, Tennessee, Kentucky, why is it that for some mysterious reason, none of the senators and none of the congressmen from these places have the audacity to actually go, hey, hold on a minute. I think our university is actually running a biological weapons program. I'll tell you the answer. The answer is those are black budget programs where NIAID has a disclosed amount of money, and right next to it is a DARPA grant that matches it. And the DARPA grant that matches it is the way we, fund university buildings. And we
well, that's right. I was
all these
25 years ago. I was let in to UT, the secret buildings, by a guy that was a big listener who later moved to MIT, and it was all DARPA on the doors.
Absolutely,
it was all DARPA,
Absolutely.
DARPA.
Absolutely, and it's the gift that keeps giving. If you go to University of Tennessee right now, giant shock. Battelle, the giant nonprofit institution that's multi-billions of dollars of laundering federal money into institutions. Giant shock. Nobody in Congress, nobody in the Senate, and particularly Rand Paul, is going to actually call out the fact that the Wuhan investigation is a cover story to make sure that no one knows that the United States is funding the programs in the United States.
And that's what Eisenhower warned of. But you're right. Rand Paul always says Wuhan and Fauci, but it's on record. It was a scandal 2014-15. Good scientists went public about Chapel Hill and gain of function with SARS.
No question.
So let's just call it out. What is wrong with Rand Paul? Is he on the payroll?
Absolutely. And the great news is most of the people, in fact, I hate to say this, but most of the people listening to this particular show may very well go, well, he's the better of evil.
Let's go ahead and go to Bikini Truther in Nevada. Thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. I do want to say one thing about Dr. Jones Naturals, if I could. I know it's off topic, but it's super important to me.
Sure.
During COVID, I went there and I got the facial serum. It's called Super Silver Facial Serum. And I'm telling you that it's changed my life. My son started taking it. His acne went away. And it's really good for underneath the face cream that I put on every day. And so I know that you need support, and that's one item so that we can stay out of World War III to keep you on air, is for people to go there and get stuff.
Absolutely. This is a patented nano silver, way beyond colloidal silver, that's in the creams, in the face spray, in the toothpaste, in the wound gel, and in the immune gargle. And it's amazing. And you're absolutely right. People that have acne have had incredible results with this. So I'm very thankful that you liked it. And I hope you'll continue to support DrJonesNaturals.com, because my dad's our big sponsor. The deep state's coming after him. And so it's a strategic place to support, plus they're great products. DrJonesNaturals.com. Anything else you want to add?
No, just I appreciate you, and God bless.
Thank you for your support. Now, please take action by going to DrJonesNaturals.com today and checking out the amazing products.
Let's get really clear on something, Americans, and the rest of the world. It's time that we don't settle for the lesser of evils. Just because somebody actually loves to go in a sparring match and allows Anthony Fauci to lie in front of Congress and has in his possession that October 2014 letter where specifically NIAID said that this was gain-of-function research. Let's be unambiguous.
Yeah, why is this been out for years?
That letter.
So is he like
public.
Iron Sheik with Hulk Hogan? This is
no question. This is entire theater, and it's good fundraising. And I am sick and tired of having allegedly the.
Well, let's say it. If this is true, and I think it is, then Rand Paul should face charges like Fauci.
There's no question, because there's a law.
No, I agree. I had family die from this crap. I'm sick of playing games with these Republicans.
18 U.S. Code Section 1001, lying to Congress. You know what's a terrible thing? That's not a, hey, you shouldn't do it. That's a law. And it is equally false. Let's get really precise on this. It's equally false for a congressman or a senator to continue to perpetrate a lie in Congress about the Wuhan virus and the leak, and was it a lab leak, and was it this or that. It's equally problematic for an elected official to lie in Congress as it is for a Supreme Court justice like Sotomayor, who lied about the pathology associated with coronavirus, which allegedly justified why we should have compulsory vaccinations for healthcare providers. And it's equally problematic for Fauci to lie and say he didn't do gain-of-function moratorium.
And now they're coming back with bird flu. So you're doing a great job. We've got an hour left. I'm going to try to shut up and give you the floor, Dr.
No, that's cool.
Martin. No. Start back over 20 minutes going uninterrupted, which you went on great rabbit trails. Go after Paul, too, because I'm tired of playing games. It's clear he knows everything. He's acting like it's just Fauci or it's just a few guys. We got Redfield running scared. That's all positive at one level. We know Paul knows this. Let's call him out. Why isn't he doing this? You're right. It's a limited hangout. But Start back when you were in the history of the virus, what was being set up, what COVID really was, and you got the floor.
Yeah. So listen, we got to go back to 1965. The first time coronavirus was ever considered to be isolated was 1965. And the first thing we did with it in 1966 is we actually take it from the United States and we infect British people, British volunteers. It was the first time we actually figured out that you could actually take a pathogen from one part of the world and move it willfully to another part of the world to see if you could make people sick. So just to be abundantly clear, coronavirus has been in play as a biological weapon agent since 1966. And most people just have their mind melt when they say that, because the first time they heard about it, most people, the first time they heard about it was in 2019. But the fact of the matter is it's been around since 1966 as a biological weapon. But let's advance to 1990. In 1990, Pfizer filed its first patent. And by the way, you heard the date correctly. In 1990, Pfizer filed the first patent on a vaccine for coronavirus. Is it any wonder that Pfizer was in the game and knew that it was going to actually somehow mysteriously show up with a vaccine? Oh,
and they told Trump, we made it in 2 days.
Yeah, they had a patent in 1990.
Doc, you've got the floor. I'm not going to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, it's all good. So you have this amazing thing where you say, hold on a minute. We've got a known agent that we know makes people sick. That's a problem. But now it gets to be a bigger problem, because in 1999, going into 2000, 2001, a very interesting problem happened. And that was that Ralph Baric figured out how to modify a component of the protein associated with coronavirus. And he actually made it into something that would target heart tissue. And Alex, it's important for us to actually say this, because in Kansas, in Texas, and soon to be in several of the states, there are a number of programs currently filing deceptive medical practices claims against Pfizer. And we need to be abundantly clear about the fact that this is actually something which is a good step, but it's an inadequate step, because we need to go further than what we've done so far. Because what happened in 1999 is Ralph Barich's coronavirus modification and manipulation program took what used to be a respiratory and a gastrointestinal bug and turned it into something that would actually create cardiomyopathy in rabbits. And in 2002, that gave rise to the patent that was filed called the infectious replication defective clone of coronavirus. Now, infectious replication defective, what on earth does that mean? That means that we're going to take an attribute associated with our model of the virus, and we're going to take that attribute and we're going to weaponize it. And we're going to weaponize it in a very precise way. We're going to amplify the ability for it to interact with a cell, to target a cell, and to actually harm the organism. But replication defective means we actually don't want it to act like a virus where it goes into the cell, multiplies, and then goes out. What we want to do is we want to use the technology associated with the protein to achieve an outcome. And in 1999, going into 2002, the world knew that the thing that had been modified was actually modified so that it would inflame the cardiovascular system. And I don't know how to explain this in a way that anybody can quite wrap their head around, but when Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson all said, oh my gosh, we're surprised by the heart disease. We're surprised by the sudden cardiac death. We're surprised by the inflammation of the cell linings of the vascular system. We're surprised by the clot formations. Not a single one of those statements was true. No one was surprised. This was published data between 1999 and 2002. So we need to be extremely clear on this. This nonsense that somehow or another Pfizer was the victim of an unintended consequence is absolute BS. They knew it was going to hit the human heart. They knew it was going to hit the vascular system. They knew there were going to be clots, and all of this was published in 2000.
And let me just back you up again.
No worries.
Because, and digress back to where you were, but I'm digressing. Remember October 2020, the CDC and the FDA puts out a document predicting bad reactions, adverse reactions that predict the myocarditis, blood clots, strokes. Yep. So why do they use, I guess they brag? I mean, what is that?
They did. They bragged that.
I mean, it's like insane.
This was this expediency argument that says, well, a few people are going to suffer, a few people are going to die, but it's all in the interest of public health. So as long as it's not your mom,
that was about getting their own employees when this happened to leave us for the greater good.
And this is, we're going to go ahead and kill people.
One time, about 15 years ago, I was on the hike and bike trail, quick story, and I was like hiking 5-6 miles, and I came up, and the guy told me his name when I wrote it down when I got in my car, and he was the head of the Texas Health Department.
Yep.
And he said, Alex, you're right about the shots. They are hurting some people, but we've decided it's for the greater good. It helps more than it hurts, which we know is not true. He told me his name. I pulled his name up in the car on my phone and looked, he was the head of the health department.
Yeah.
So the state head health department, he was telling me the same thing. This is their cult.
Yeah. And they are okay with the necessary deaths. Remember, and Bill Gates' number is 800 million. Right? 800 million. Like, Hitler couldn't have fantasized that number.
Yeah, Hitler was a lightweight.
My gosh. You know, you sit there going, Stalin, Hitler, Pol Pot, you know, Mao, put them all together, and they're freaking not even in the farm team, right? That's not major league. What we're talking about is major league. But what's critical to understand is that we knew not only that this was going to harm and kill people, but we also knew that in 2010, when mysteriously a venture capitalist and a guy who is actually part of the National Science Foundation's research program called Darwinian Chemical Systems. I love that you laugh, because I laughed.
They're telling you right there.
Darwinian Chemical Systems. And people go, well, what's Darwinian Chemical Systems, Dave? Well, the answer is really simple. For 10 years, the National Science Foundation, starting in 2000, going to 2010, wanted to figure out if you could introduce mRNA into a cell and get the cell to write into the genome of the host cell. And it turns out that 10 years in, they succeeded. And you know what they called the company that they formed? Oh, that's right, Moderna. Modified RNA, Moderna. They told you what this was. And they didn't tell you.
So listen, I'm going to stop you again.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're doing an incredible job, doctor. You're the best at this. For like scientists that watch, they totally get you. But for the general public, do me a favor, quantify then what the end game is, the master plan, then go back into the technicals.
Master plan is simple. 3/4 of the world's population are unnecessary and to be shoved off the planet.
So it's being done now.
The great news is it's happening. We actually have watched World War III, and let's get really clear.
You're right. We're in World War III.
It's already happening.
We're in the middle of a bioweapon war.
We're sitting there waiting for the kinetics. We don't understand that this war,
a smart war isn't nuclear. It's silent.
Not only is it not, let's think about the.
And you set up a medical system that makes money while you kill people.
My gosh, you actually have pediatricians that were actually financially incentivized to get a percentage of their children injected. And we know that in 2018, we know that the pseudouridine that was put in the shot, yes, big word, just stay with me. The thing that was put in the shot to stabilize the mRNA, the thing that was modified was published to be lethal in every single use it had ever been put in.
So they're doing a beta test.
We knew we were going straight to humans to kill them.
Am I wrong to say, though, this is the beta test to see if they can get away with something bigger?
There's no question. And the great news is you and I and a bunch of people who are in the community that's watching this presented a little bit of a steep...
That was my next question. How's it going for them?
Sucks.
No.
You know? And it's great. I listened to you, Alex, a couple times in the last week or two, and I just want to stop for a moment. Alex has to say this because nobody else does, so I'm going to say it for him. When he talks about the fact that this is a war, and he's talking about the importance of InfoWars, and he's talking about the importance of keeping this thing going as long as we can, I want to be abundantly clear. This is David Martin speaking as a totally unpaid spokesperson. I happen to just care about this. But I don't think we understand that we are no different right now than the French resistance was when Europe was occupied. We have to see this as a war. We cannot sit here and pretend that somehow or another we're going to sit there and go, well, you know, somebody else is going to solve the problem. You are going to solve the problem. And having a venue like this, let's be really clear, because people like me, I can't be on Bloomberg and CNBC where I used to be. I can't be there anymore because what I say will go in the face.
And I used to see you on there.
Of course, that's where I used to live. But here's the problem, people. It's one thing for Alex to say, hey, pray for this organization and support it. But I'm going to be David Martin saying that without Alex, without the amazing work of people like, you know, Russell Brand and Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and others who are actually out there trying to keep a conversation going. If we didn't have these conversations in these venues, we have lost the war before we ever started. Think about this, and Alex didn't tell me to say this, but I'm saying it to you. I want you to really think about this. George Washington, Valley Forge, middle of the winter. Okay? Terrible time to be at war. Terrible time to be suffering because you realize that this thing that was supposed to be a revolutionary war that you thought was going to be over after Lexington and Concord, turns out it's going to be a hard slog. You're going to be at this thing for 10 years. And a lot of people were freezing in tents in Valley Forge. And a lot of people didn't have boots. And a lot of people didn't have enough ammunition. And a lot of people were sitting there going, well, why are some people staying in Philadelphia in warm houses while I'm freezing my ass off in the middle of Pennsylvania? This is the moment. This is our Valley Forge. This is our Valley Forge. This is when it stops being fun. It stops being fun to actually be on the side of the people who are rah-rah and, you know, go march and have a sign and protest and whatever else. This is when it gets hard because this is the Valley Forge winter. This is when we are faced all across the world with this story that, well, COVID's kind of over. And yeah, the H5N2 bird flu might come up, but it's, you know, it's not going to be as bad as COVID. No, this is the Valley Forge, and we've got a long campaign in front of us.
This is the time for winter soldiers.
That's exactly right. So when Alex says pray for this organization, when Alex says go online and make sure that you help financially support this organization, he's not saying that because Alex wants to succeed as a person. Alex knows that without the utility of this voice and this platform, we will lose the war. So let's be really clear. I couldn't be in this studio. I couldn't have an amazing technical team that's making this happen. I couldn't have Alex sitting here next to me. I couldn't have any of this material getting into your hands if it weren't for the fact that some of you have already supported this. But remember that this is your job now, because the information's out there. That's not the problem. Rand Paul knows the facts, right? The House Select Committee.
It's actually, I've seen you for a year call him out. It's sad. But I can't be a traitor by being nice to him. He knows he's bought off.
Exactly. But this is why I'm saying, think when Alex tells you to support InfoWars, I'm telling you, do it, because this is when, are you ready for this? This is when the Benedict Arnolds happen. Remember what happened at Valley Forge. And this is a part of history we don't like to tell. But if we had actually had a Continental Congress that actually supported the campaign, really supported the campaign, like actually said, yes, we're going to make sure our troops have shoes, we're going to make sure our troops have bullets.
Washington gave everything up to fund it.
Exactly right. If we didn't have those people, then we wouldn't have had the traitors that ultimately made the battle last longer. Had we done the right thing as patriots, we would have actually shortened the period of conflict. And that's exactly what we need to be doing right now.
So Rand Paul's Benedict Arnold.
That's exactly right.
And I hate to say that. I've known him since he was in college, and his dad ran again in 96. I had him on. But he knows all this.
He does. And so does the House Select Committee. Let's be abundantly clear. If you don't know the information I'm presenting, it's because you actually don't have a computer, you don't have anybody who's on social media, and you don't have a phone, because it turns out that the material that I'm sharing right now today is material that has been shared at the European Union Parliament times how many billion views now?
By you.
Who knows, right? But this material has been out. So if you don't know it, it's willful ignorance now. It's willful ignorance. And I know that they all know it. But if we go back to the crime...
Yeah, starting over. I've interrupted a lot. This is it's on record they made it. I know you show the documents where it's in financial forms. They had COVID-19 on the shelf years before.
Absolutely. Everything is known and knowable. This is not news. But what we actually have, and this is where it gets a little subtle, and this is where I've encouraged very courageous people, and I'm going to call out a couple people who I know are actually people who are working really hard to do the best they can do. But I will tell you, there are a number of attorneys general, there are a number of surgeon generals across the country, people like Lepeto in Florida, people like Ken Paxton here in Texas, people like Raul Labrador.
And they're all under attack.
These are people who are absolutely attacked, but they are the ones who are actually holding the first vanguard positions we need to hold to actually allow us to say that we, the people, can start taking some territory. And that's why I'm going to come back to the Ninth Circuit, because the Ninth Circuit is the first time, courtesy of George Wentz and his legal team at Davalier, courtesy of the Health Freedom Defense Fund and Leslie Manookian, courtesy of all of the LA Unified School District teachers who had the courage to stand up when nobody was standing up, courtesy of that, we had the Ninth Circuit Court issue a majority opinion that said that the Jacobson ruling, little bit of history, Jacobson, 1905, the Supreme Court ruling that the public health system has been using to defend vaccinations, the Ninth Circuit Court just held a week and a half ago that Jacobson does not apply. And there's another Supreme Court decision, which is called Cruzan, that does apply. And let me unpack it, because it's important for us to unpack this. Jacobson said that if you don't take a shot for smallpox, you can be fined $20 or $5 or whatever it is. That's what that case was about. It never was about justifying compulsory vaccinations. And everybody who tells you that Jacobson justifies compulsory vaccinations is actually not even reading the case. It does not. What Jacobson did say was that public health interest is to stop the transmission of a pathogen. That's true. That was said by Oliver Wendell Holmes, Supreme Court Justice, in that case. But here comes a kicker. Alex, you'll remember somewhere back in the freaking drivel of the last hour and a half, you'll remember I said this was an infectious replication defective coronavirus, which means transmission not only was not possible to be stopped by the injection, transmission wasn't happening. Kind of important.
So they put a dud out on purpose just to create fear.
Absolutely. And so what you have is a situation where, yes, people have spike protein fragments, some of them from the shot, some of them from the tests that were done. How many people lined up and got nasal swabs shoved up their nose? How many of you know that DARPA funded a company that, are you ready for this, infects nasal swabs?
Incredible.
You can't make this up.
I remember you like 3 years ago saying they're going to sell your DNA and they're going to and it came out.
Right.
Exactly. You called it.
And so we're in a situation where when you get to the 2018, and I do want to give you all some beautiful information, because we're going to get to the hopeful side of this in a second. But we're going to get to the bad news first. And the bad news first is in 2014, when that gain-of-function moratorium was authorized to be waived by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, the pathogen that they were working on was the Wuhan Institute of Virology virus 1 spike protein. In 2016, they said it was poised for human emergence. And in 2018 and 2019, a very bizarre thing happened. The United States government reclaimed the patent from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and the Department of Health and Human Services at the National Institutes of Health took that UNC Chapel Hill patent on infectious replication defective coronavirus and reclaimed title and interest to it. And 4 months later, in April of 2019, Moderna amended 4 patent applications in which they made the following statement: after an accidental or intentional release of a respiratory pathogen. You know the word that bothers me in that sentence? Release. Does that sound like leak? Does that sound like accident?
No, release.
No, it says release. This was not about an oops, a bat got away, or oops, a wet market thing happened. This was Moderna amending 4 patent filings in April of 2019. Then, in September 18th of 2019, we have the addition of the lethal respiratory pathogen that's going to be accidentally or intentionally released. That's September 18th. 1 day later, September 19th, 2019, President Trump is handed an executive order, which unfortunately was him signing an executive order, which is the coup d'etat that overthrew him. And I wish I didn't have to say that, but it happens to be true. Because what he did when he signed the executive order on September 19th, 2019, is he actually put in motion the events that would lead to the cascade of the pandemic, and it was the pandemic that was used as the cover operation to overthrow the democracy of the United States. There is no question that this had nothing to do with public health. This had everything to do with Anthony Fauci announcing that he was going to do a coup. He actually executed the coup, and here's our problem collectively. We're waiting for a despot in Colombia or in Panama to show up with fatigues and actually have a violent interaction. We wouldn't recognize a coup in the 21st century if it happened right in front of our face.
Exactly. We're looking for Hitler. No, it comes via medical suits.
Exactly. We have no idea that it's dancing nurses and it's doctors that are on camera.
And PR.
Dancing, and it's PR firms, and it's Fors Marsh developing the language.
So let me ask you this. If it's not going well for them, and they still try to do monkeypox and Marburg.
Yeah, monkeypox was a real hit.
And then now the bird flu, what are they going to pull next when their program isn't working for them and the whole world's awakening?
Yeah, well, I think I might have spoiled a little bit of the H5N2 thing, because I made the observation, and I wasn't supposed to say this out loud, but it turns out we were told that the guy in Mexico had H5N2, which had never been seen before in humans. That's what they told us, except for a 2016 patent in which H5N2 was not only seen, but it was part of a patent. And worse than that, it was sold to the people who got the patent from BEI Resources. Alex, you know what you've never heard of? BEI Resources. You know why you've never heard of it? Because we don't want to admit it exists. But back in the early part of the 1900s, the Rockefeller Foundation set up a thing called BEI Resources, and guess what that is? That's the shopping center. That's the Walmart of biological weapons, owned by NIAID. Lo and behold, the patent actually makes reference to the fact that H5N2 was purchased from BEI Resources. This is the we never saw it anywhere before a guy in Mexico who happened to turn out to be, what, overweight, diabetic, what else was he?
Well, now Mexico admits he didn't have it. He's a fake PCR test. So what are they going to do now that their whole plan's exposed?
Well, what's going to happen, and what is happening, is that the conversations like this are happening such that we are preempting the plan before it can even be enabled. And this is the part that I love about this.
Their UN treaty didn't go through?
We knew, by the way, that around Memorial Day we were going to have the UN treaty signed. Guess what? We scuttled it. And we scuttled it. This is the point. I want you to look at me, and I'm looking at you, right? This is an amazing moment. You and I don't have the billions of dollars of PR. We don't have the support of all of the ad agencies and all the info control of the agencies and all of the multilateral organizations. We're two guys who put our pants on one leg at a time. I think. I don't know if you levitate.
I do. No, I do.
I actually do mine one leg at a time. But we are actually two people, and we're the ones that stopped them. I love this, right? I love.
Oh, it's historical. I know. It's
how
true.
Amazing it is that with none of the resources, none of the incumbent power that people think is in control, they couldn't win over the voices of a crazy bow tie wearing guy in the European Union Parliament, of a crazy guy sitting in Austin, Texas, fighting the battle to make sure truth is heard. They couldn't win over what we're doing.
No, I agree. So we're winning, but you're a smart guy. They're going to throw curveballs. How does the empire strike back?
Well,
when you visit drjonesnaturals.com, you'll find amazing brain boost nootropics like Top Brain. It's incredible, but it still uses classical systems to stimulate the neurons in the brain and to give you energy. Next Level Foundational Energy does not do that. It is the breakdown of folic acid into methylfolate mixed with other natural compounds that are known to push it into the cells. It then cleans up the mitochondria and allows more energy to be brought into the cell. You will feel dramatic energy when you take Next Level Foundational Energy with no letdown. But if you are a European or Northern European, most of us have partially broken genes and cannot absorb folic acid or process it properly. If you have broken genes, you are going to feel explosive energy. So be very, very, very careful when you first get Next Level Foundational Energy. It funds the operation. It's an amazing product. Everybody should experience it. It's discounted now, right now, and exclusively available at drjonesnaturals.com. That's drjonesnaturals.com. There's a lot of other amazing products as well at drjonesnaturals.com, and they keep my show on the air. So I want to thank you all for your past support and encourage all of you to visit drjonesnaturals.com right now. And for breaking news and updates, be sure and follow me at Real Alex Jones here on X.
Cool thing is, all of us need to recognize that we need to actually make sure that we stop celebrating the wins that aren't wins. I want to be really, really clear. The House Select Committee on COVID investigation is not a win. On X, on Facebook, on social media, on whatever platform you use, don't celebrate the lesser of evils. We're not there. And we're not going to win if we celebrate things that should not be celebrated.
And by the way, speak to SPARS, because obviously that's a battle plan. The tweets are the same, everything. It says 2025, 2028 is 2020, 2024. It's a battle plan so they can carry the code around. Tell me if you disagree. General Flynn agrees, looked at it. So in that, they even talk about 3 years in, the world awakens. They use that to discredit government, collapse society. But if we just jumped right to the globalists instead of having a civil war, if we focus our anger at them, they lose. They think they're going to focus all this anger on each other.
Yeah. Well, and this is the piece that...
but it shows how sick they are. Like it's right there.
Absolutely. And they've done it, and they've done it over and over again. But here's the thing. After all this time, Alex, and I told you, I started this nonsense in 1999. So of all people, I have the worst batting average of any human being. 25 years at the plate, still haven't connected all the way, right? So I could look at it and go, well, that makes Dave Martin a failure.
You've totally connected.
Here's the thing. The thing that I'm going to say is we have the ability right now to actually do something that we haven't done before. And I'm going to start with a comment that I've made many times. Alex, do you and I agree on everything?
Well, I agree with all. You've taught me a lot. I agree with you.
Yeah, but here's
I don't know your personal views, but
the great news is we don't have to. What we can do.
We agree on not having bioweapons attackers.
We can actually say that the perspectives you have and the perspectives I have are worth putting in front of people to consider. That's what we agree on.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that's what we agree on. And we can have disagreement. We can have honest disagreement. We can have conversations, and we can treat each other with humanity.
But that's the thing.
All of them wanted is to stop that.
Yeah, exactly. But what about this? The criminals do such outlandish stuff, like you said at the start of the talk, that we're normal people, just want to go home and be nice. We think we project our own decency on them. But if you study sociopaths and psychopaths and you study medical tyranny, and we've caught them, we just have to admit this is happening.
Right. And that's our big breakthrough. Our big breakthrough is to realize that when it was monkeypox, remember that we had the truck spill in Pennsylvania where allegedly a bunch of monkeys sent running around, and then all of a sudden we were supposed to have monkeypox? Tiny little problem. Most of us didn't go to a gay nightclub in Germany, allegedly, which is where allegedly people caught monkeypox. I know I didn't go to a gay nightclub in Germany. I'm pretty sure you didn't. I think you were here during that period of time.
And then Fauci brags on videos about hepatitis shots to give.
Exactly right. We've done this over and over again. The difference between us the last 120 years and the difference between us today is that we have the ability to have conversations where this information is not shocking anymore. Tuskegee was shocking. The smallpox outbreaks were shocking. The way in which we used the public acceptance with things like tetanus and ultimately things with pneumonia and other things to accept the overuse of antibiotics. These are all things that were done where we were told there was a problem, we were told that the government was the solution, and we were told that if we only listen to the government, we're somehow going to be better off. Well, guess what? That model for 120 years has failed.
It's over. So people are awake now. They don't know exactly what's going on, but they're awake. What do we do versus what the establishment's going to pull?
Well, the great news is we start working together. Guess what I just did a couple minutes ago? What I did a couple minutes ago is I promoted Alex and the show and InfoWars and this team, and I did it without asking for anything. We start depositing goodwill. Start depositing goodwill all over the place. We actually have the ability right now to actually change our behavior. Start living and treating each other with decency. Start doing things where the community and the humanity that we actually manifest is something that people look at and go, I want more of that, more than I want the fear, more than I want the tyranny, more than I want the control. Because it turns out that the only way the globalists win is if you give in to fear. That is the only way they win. They cannot win without fear. They wouldn't know love if it bit them in the ass.
No, I totally agree. So in the time we have left, and you've been gracious to be here, and I want you to host now as long as you can go. But just, I've asked a lot of questions. I've taken us down great rabbit trails. Let's start over because we're reaching millions of people right now. We're going to cut this up. It'll reach tens of millions more. And Tucker's got to get you on, and so does Joe Rogan. And I'm going to call them both and tell them they got to get you on. Quantifying, where would they have gone if we didn't get in their way? What's the next move? Other key details of this? Who are the main players from your research? Who is the most guilty?
Well, with Davalier Law Group, with the Health Freedom Defense Fund, with a couple others, we got masks off planes a year and a half before they were supposed to. And that was probably 4 or 5 people that got masks off planes around the world.
That.
Right, because that case was not supposed to succeed. But the entire team at Davalier, the Health Freedom Defense Fund, got together and said, we're going to take masks off planes, and we won in Florida, and that meant we won in the entire world. So every time you fly without a face mask, that's because 5 Americans stood up and said no. 5.
So the point is believe in yourself.
Absolutely. Because it turns out that their system is a system that relies on the presumption that the all-powerful man behind the curtain is all-powerful. But guess what? He isn't. All you have to do is call him out for his fraud. When it comes to H5N2, which was supposed to be the bird flu they were all supposed to catch, so that we all shut up about the World Health Organization as a criminal organization, which was set up as a criminal organization in the 1950s to take over the world, it turns out that if we actually call them out on the fact that they were a criminal organization and they continue to be a criminal organization, newsflash, the World Health Organization doesn't have the power it had. They were going to run the entire treaty through, and in May, we were going to lose our civility. We were going to lose our decency. We were going to lose being individual sovereign nations and civilians inside of those nations that had any rights. We were going to lose it all, and they lost. And they lost because people like us had the better conversation. We can get in front of every single one of these campaigns. We can get in front of every one of these problems, and all we have to do is not fall for the notion that somehow or another the all-powerful other is sitting there and we are incompetent and impotent to deal with the all-powerful other. Because it turns out they are not all-powerful, and they are not even the other. They are an anonymous group of self-serving psychopaths who have decided that they're going to do whatever they can to take over the world. And where do we go after this? Well, it's very simple. Right now, our job between now and 2028 is what I like to refer to as the Armada of Arcs strategy. In our history, we have a conversation around Noah and an ark. that saved Noah's family and saved 2 of every kind of animal that crawled around and walked around and everything else, and then 7 of all the unclean animals, 7 pairs of all the unclean animals, or all the clean animals. Listen, that's a great story, except it misses the point. We need to actually create a system where it's an armada of arks. We don't need to save the couple of us that are authorized to live. That's how the globalists think. That's how the incumbent power systems think. They actually want to have their houses. They want to have their tunnels. They want to have their escape boats. They want to have everything else. We need to actually be building the armada of arks so that humanity makes this transition. Not a few authorized people make it. We need to make it. So what does that mean? That means start thinking about what it means, how you treat your neighbor, how you treat people who are actually in your ecosystem, how you redefine what the parable was when Jesus talked about the Good Samaritan. How do you redefine your role in the world? Because here's the problem. The minute you can actually find out that, you know what, at my table, I always have extra chairs. You know why? Because somebody might come by. Alex has an extra chair here in case I come to Austin. That's the way we need to start acting. We will prevail the minute we start having inside of our behavior.
And as you said, you have to admit you're in a war. You have to admit you're in a war.
Exactly right.
And so getting back to this, because there's so many technicals, and I interrupt you like 20 times, for people that don't understand, say it again, where were they going to take us if we fully bought this? How do you expect the enemy to strike back?
Well, they were going to kill us, and most of us didn't bend the knee. Remember that 1/3 of the people fell for it, 1/3 of the people were coerced, and 1/3 of the people said no.
And now 4% uptake.
That's exactly right. So the good news is, not only did they blow up the strategy of how they were going to take over the world, but they destroyed the mechanism whereby they were going to do it. Here's another thing they did, and this is equally important. They told us that we were going to have solar flares in 2022. Remember that? We're going to have all these solar flares, going to take out our communication system, going to take out everything else. And they were relying on an old story of the Harrington effect. The Harrington effect was this giant EMP that was attributed to a solar flare that took out the electrical grid in the 1800s. Well, it turns out that they wanted to do the same thing to take down our banking system. And so they told us that we were going to have all these electromagnetic disruptions and interruptions, and guess what happened? A bunch of you went and got cash. Kind of sucks when you're not relying on digital currency, when you actually have a secure way of making transactions with golds and silvers and with cash. It turns out that we didn't fall for it.
So they'll only make this move.
Every single one of these is an intentional act to say they're going to try to get you to live off of your cell phone and your computer. And my recommendation is very simple. Don't.
Exactly. So if we become dependent, they got full control. So you said it. They got their escape boats, the bunkers they're building. A real elite, a real aristocratic elite would build up humanity because they're going to be in control of it and would want a powerful society. But instead, they're such jerks. They want to hurt people because they have such a low view of themselves of projecting it. And so it's ridiculous. I mean, take Zuckerberg. I'm no military expert, but I know everybody in Hawaii and Kauai hates him. Yeah. If hell goes down, everybody's going to his house. Doesn't matter how many troops he's got, how many robots. That's a grave he's built. It's not a threat. It's an obvious thing. They're all waiting for the power to go off. The first place they go is there. They see him as the devil. Why would they think bunkers are going to protect them?
Well, I think that they genuinely thought, and by the way, tragically, I did a show, I don't know, a couple years ago where I brought up this 800 million number, and it was just simple math. All I did was actually do Bill Gates' math for him. And when I said it, people go, oh, that's hyperbole. There's no way 800 million people are going to die. Well, maybe, or maybe not. What I can say is very simple. What I know is that the incapacitation of about 1/3 of the world's population is certain. That means that people are going to be sick, they're going to die, or they're going to be caregivers for people who are sick and dying. What that means is that an enormous amount of the world is going to be distracted over the next 3 to 5 years with cancers, with heart disease, with strokes, with disabilities, all because of the injection, all known to have been consequences of the injection when it was first built. We know that's going to happen. That's going to take a lot of people out. But that's a great point, which is, what was their game plan? And I'm going to tell you a quick story. Can I tell you a quick story? I was in Rwanda when the African Free Trade Agreement was being signed. And I was with Paul Kagame, who is absolute, there's a whole nother story about him and the genocide that he was involved in. in Rwanda during the conflict. But I was actually watching, and I got uninvited to ever come back for making the following observation. Bill Gates had decided to go to Rwanda, the Rwanda-Uganda border, and he decided that he wanted to see the giant gorillas that are in the jungles in Rwanda and in the Uganda border. But he didn't like to have, inconveniently, these Africans that were in the picture. So what he did was he made it so that only if you paid $10,000 and you had an official escort could you even go to the place where the gorillas existed. He literally created a rule that he got Kagame to go off on, which was actually to say, we're going to go ahead and make this only the playground for the uber wealthy. So you helicopter in, conveniently, you don't have any locals to get in the way because they don't have $10,000 to actually put in their pockets. And when I called the president, Paul Kagame, out on the fact that he had let Bill Gates rob Rwandan citizens of their own natural resource, their access to the forest, their access to gorillas, their access to the ecosystem that they've had for tens of thousands of years, I was told that I was anti-Rwanda and anti-development. Well, it turns out that's their worldview. Their worldview is...
I was about to say, they revel in taking things away from people.
Exactly. And so the great news is, don't let them. Remember that we only can be deprived of what we're willing to give.
No, I agree. So going back to this, Dr. Martin, you're a really smart guy. If they're in big trouble and all this is happening, what do you expect them to do next?
Well, what they're going to do is they're going to already do what's in play right now, which is they're going to try to increase the electoral version of the hijack that happened in 2016 and again in 2020. We're going to see a massive amount of voter fraud happening through the form of early voting, electronic voting, illegal immigrant voting. We're going to have every version of corruption of the democratic process as we come into November.
The kitchen sink.
We're going to have everything thrown at us. This is a world in which what I would advise people as they vote, and I would advise communities to, as a community, put together visual surveillance of programs where you actually have people who photograph, are you ready for this? Photograph how you voted. You didn't have to do that before because it used to be that a vote was a vote. But now we have plenty of evidence that says you could push a button 10,000 times and a signal could go to Spain or it could go to Italy or it could go anywhere else and it be converted into anything it wants to be so that a foregone conclusion happens. We need to actually think right now about how we make sure election...
Well, that's right. A lot of people say, well, if it's all rigged, give up. No. By engaging it, we expose it.
Think about it. Expose it. Be part of the solution. And then recognize that as you move into the next, now, 6 to 9 months, which is when we're going to watch a whole bunch of desperation happen, what I would highly advise, and I've advised this everywhere I go, get used to using cash and make sure you have a lot of it on hand.
Absolutely.
Why? Because your behavior will not be modifiable if electronic participation in the economy...
People need water filtration, food...
That's exactly right.
Cash. So let me ask you this. Pulling back from this, because I want to be honest, my integrity is everything. I don't care about going to Detroit and being with J.V. Vance and Trump and all that. Great. I followed it. Trump was for all the therapeutics. He believed in science. They already had this plan. They gave it to him. He got conned. He won't come out and admit he's wrong. I'm mad at him about that. But I gut level think Trump doesn't understand all this, just like Ronald Reagan. I'm not trying to give him a pass. They obviously hate him. Am I wrong? Because Rand Paul's smart. He knows. He's been sent the documents. Yep. He won't say it. So I'm mad at him. Am I wrong to say that Trump is in over his depth on this?
So I'm going to say the following. Donald Trump signed on September 19th, 2019, a executive order that he did not know what he was signing. I absolutely know that to be the case. And I know that he had no idea what a DNA-based vaccine platform was. So I know that President Trump did not know what was the substance of that order, and he didn't know the motivation. He didn't know that at the time that was put in front of him by the Department of Health and Human Services, he didn't know that Alex Azar was under criminal investigation for antitrust violations in Mexico for price-fixing diabetes medications for the poor people in Mexico. Trump didn't know that at the time. What I can also tell you is that Trump did know that Dr. Zev Zelenko and others who actually had treatments that he wound up using for his own benefit.
And that's why I say he's good. He believes that he was just promote everything.
Absolutely. And what he was doing was saying, hey, it's a national crisis. Let's respond. Let's do the right thing. And
he believed in the medical system.
No question. And he did the right thing. But here's the problem. What happened was several of the largest donors that actually had a personal interest in Moderna's stock happened to also be large donors to the Trump campaign.
That's right.
And I hate to say it.
No, it's true.
Good old-fashioned 30 pieces of silver, you sell your
And his
soul.
strength is his weakness.
That's exactly right.
They can't bully him. He won't bow to them, but he won't bow to me.
That's exactly
He
right.
won't admit he's wrong.
No, and listen.
That's the paradox.
And I agree. And here and what I would say is this. President Trump could easily say that he was conned, that he did not.
I've told him this in person. So what you said,
we're on the same page.
Maybe he's ready now. I told him this a year ago. Talk to him right now. Trump, they're going to set you up for this. We know you're not behind it. He's already stopped promoting it, thank God, but he didn't do the lockdowns. We get it. We know. They hate you. We get it. But what would you say to Trump right now?
Well, I would say that Operation Warp Speed, without his knowledge, was actually signing the death warrant for a number of individuals who happen to be American citizens, who happen to be people that you swore an oath to protect. And the fact of the matter is, that was never disclosed. Anthony Fauci, Deborah Birx, CDC, FDA lied. And as a result of their deception, the actions that you took in the interest of saving the country wound up harming U.S. citizens. And the job that we have now is actually not to sit there and point the finger and blame who did it or who didn't do it. What we have to do right now is we have to say the executive order that gets signed on the day you become president, the executive order that is signed is the absolute erasure of the pharmaceutical liability shields that are in place for vaccine manufacturers. Because if we want this thing to end, we really want this thing to end, what will happen is companies will be responsible for the products that they make. Period.
And then they'll stop. And then they'll stop.
Pfizer and the minute Moderna have fiscal and civil and criminal liability for the things that they actually are producing, guess how many pandemics we're going to have?
Not a lot.
None. We will not have a pandemic.
So Doc, in closing, and I really appreciate your time, spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever time you've got, on where we are, because you've been dead on about this, how they go to your website, how they find out more, and what we can do to stop this, and other tidbits of all these slides and all these documents, because it's horrible they've killed tens of millions of people, but it's also very positive that they bit off more than they can chew. Humanity's really waking up fast, but I also don't want to be overconfident with our enemies of what they may pull.
Well, and they'll try a number of things, but they played all of their hand. And here's the part that people have to understand.
You're saying they're out of bullets.
They're out of bullets. They are out of bullets. They wanted to make sure we got vaccine passports. They wanted to make sure that the World Health Organization came along and suspended all of our civil liberties for the rest of time. They wanted to do a number of things, and what happened was the World Economic Forum failed. Klaus Schwab got tired and now is stepping down. The actors know that they failed. We have, Melinda Gates has actually realized that the foundation, the Gates Foundation, was actually a giant ruse that was done as nothing more than the setup for laundering the antitrust monopoly felony crimes that her husband had done back when Janet Reno settled with Microsoft. We know those things. And we know that the entire establishment, whether it's the World Economic Forum, whether it's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, whether it's Open Philanthropy and Dustin Moskowitz, we know that all of these organizations thought that they could bamboozle all of us. They thought that by putting fact checkers on every post, we'd stop sharing posts. They thought by canceling people that we wouldn't actually listen to people's voices. They thought that by making sure that we never showed up on mainstream media, that nobody would ever hear our voices. But the bad news is for them, we continue to do it. So what are the simple things that you can do? The simple things you can do, like I said before, support the alternative platforms that are allowing these voices to be heard. Make sure that you actually have these conversations when you consider political donations, when you consider political action, when you consider endorsing anyone for any position of leadership, from a school board to a city council to a county council to a Congress seat to a senator to a president. In every single moment, make sure that you are articulating the fact that we, the people, have the power. We have power to actually change the trajectory that we're on. We have the power to make sure that the people who actually acted with impunity no longer can do that. And remember that things like the conversations I had just a few days ago with Maria Z and others, these conversations where I actually introduced the idea that there are 68 scheduled toxins prepared for release, these are conversations that make the likelihood of pandemic not happen. The fact that on multiple occasions we've talked about the fact that we're going to have a kinetic war where we're going to look at the formation and the creation of EMPs, electromagnetic pulses, where we're going to try to create the theater of taking out critical communications infrastructure so that the public actually has to accept digital currencies, CBDCs, all kinds of other behavior modification technologies. Every one of these things, what we need to do is we need to have enough of us talking about it so that it can't be a surprise, because fear can only come if you're surprised. If you've anticipated it, it's not fear. If you've anticipated, you can be prepared, you can be ready. They cannot knock you off your game if you know all of their game. So our job is really simple. Share this, communicate this, support every one of the voices that are actually out there making sure that this information continues to stay front and center. And like I said at the middle of this interview, we're in Valley Forge. This is the middle of the beginning phase of the campaign. The best of America is in front of us. The best of America and the best of the world is in front of us. We, the people, spent 120 years getting lazy, getting complacent, and getting indifferent to the power grabs that took place beginning in 1898, again in 1904, then again in 1913, and certainly by 1933, 1934.
Exactly. And
every one of these things was a takeover. We let it happen. We, the people, can say no.
That's right, because the alternative is total enslavement.
Absolutely.
But the good news is we have the initiative now. All the top talk show hosts, you reach millions a day. All the top people are talking about liberty. Humans are hungry for liberty. We can win this thing.
That's exactly
right. But we
right.
can't lie to ourselves about what we're up against.
That's exactly right. And once again, this is World War III. That's not hyperbole. It just comes in a different form. So we need to understand we are at war. We are at war for the first time, not with a nation-state actor. It's not whose flag is above it, because I'll tell you what, there's some great Chinese people, and there's some terrible Chinese people. There's some great Americans. There's some terrible Americans. There's some great Germans.
It's spiritual.
There are tons of people. This is actually a war on a different playing field.
Good versus evil.
We have to understand it. We have to take it seriously. And most of all, we have to have the audacity of waking up every day. And I'm going to make sure you all hear me say this. Every day, wake up realizing that you've been given a gift of another day. That's a gift. And no one can take from you what is not yours to give. This is not your life. It's not Alex's life. It's not my life. We are here for the purpose that we were created for. And we will serve that purpose until the last day that we're here. So don't worry. They can't take what you don't give them. So don't give them anything. Preserve your position with your purpose.
That's right. Stop being scared of them and step into God's office.
Exactly right. It's exactly right.
God's made us an office. We've got a mission.
That's exactly right.
So follow God instead of Satan. So in closing, how do people follow your information? How do they find it?
Dr. D. Martin World on X, davidmartin.world, and fullylive.world are the websites where we try to keep our content up. And believe it or not, we still have a YouTube channel that I think we only lost 2 videos on, so you can go to David Martin World on YouTube. If you want any of the historical stuff, all of the archive of all the butterflies of the week, which were where we put all this information starting in March of 2020, every single one of those is still up with the exception, I think, of 2. So make sure you have a look at it. And I'll tell you, Alex, the only way I ever want to do these interviews is sitting next to you.
Well,
I absolutely love the fact that we could do this spontaneously.
I appreciate you coming here because,
and I'm super grateful.
Because we got maybe another 2 months, maybe we stay open, but they're closing in. I don't take that as a thing against me. It shows how desperate the system is. I mean, they've been desperate.
Yep. And the great news is, as I said before we came on air, you know, I find it fascinating that the people who actually advanced the narrative about getting the shot, advanced the fear mongering, advanced all of these horrific interventions at the beginning of the pandemic. Andrew Cuomo, who quite literally sent senior citizens to their death because he made sure that every hospital...
That was a question I had to forget. Yeah. What do you make of Burks and Redfield all running from the sinking ship?
Oh, well, listen, all you know is we're on the right ship. because they're leaving that ship and they're coming over to our conversation. Chris Cuomo, CNN anchor, who had all kinds of things to say about people not getting the shot. Guess what? He's now saying, hey, we shouldn't have gotten the shot. Listen, we're on the winning team, people. It's the best thing in the world. We're on the winning team. So act like it. Act like it. Put the jersey on, suit up. Give somebody a high five that was on this team. Remember that we have already prevailed. History is on our side. It already is. And every one of the perpetrators is realizing that it is a sinking ship. They're trying to jump off of it. That means we have the winning team.
Well, let me ask you this in closing, because I've only talked to you a few times on the phone and I got here. I know I've had buyout offers from them and I've been threatened as well. I would imagine that's happened to you. What do you? It has?
Many times.
What do you do when they call up or threaten you?
You know, it's actually funny. Jesus had an interesting story that I've said many times in a lot of circles. We've actually never told the story right. We talk about the temptation in the desert with Jesus, but we actually never listened to the story because Jesus didn't have a problem with temptation. That wasn't his problem. He was actually teaching us how evil works. And what he did, interesting enough, was he actually gave us the roadmap to smell out evil every time.
Get behind me, Satan.
What he said was that the first thing the devil's going to do is he's going to try to reorder the natural order. That's what the devil always does, stones to bread. That's the first trick that they try, right? They're going to reorder the natural order. So what do? They offer you a thing which says, Alex, if you only do this, I'm going to actually do the following things for you, right? They try to reorder the natural order. They try to get you to change. The second thing that the devil did to Jesus is he took him up to the top of the temple and he said, jump off and get the angels to save you. Well, what was that about? That was about actually denying the natural order of behavior and relying on technology, in this case, angels, to save you, where he didn't need saving. Because what he had done was he had gone up to the top of the temple, he threw himself off. That's a dumb idea, so don't do that. And don't rely on technology to save you.
It was a dare. It was a dare.
Exactly. And when that failed, the devil said, bow down to me and I'll give you the kingdoms of the world. Well, here's a little tiny problem. You know, I never knew that when I was sitting in Brussels at the European Union Parliament, I never knew that that particular speech was going to be the speech. I didn't know it. As a matter of fact, my beautiful wife, Kim, got up early, about 2 o'clock in the morning so she could hear me. And she called me right after I was done, and she goes, how do you think it went, Dave? And I said, well, I think it was one of the worst speeches I ever did. And she goes, just wait. I said, what do you mean, just wait? She said, I think it was perfect. I think it was just long enough that you delivered a lot of information, but just short enough that people will listen to all of it. I watched as that video went 100 million, 200 million, 1 billion. I never knew that that was going to be the video. But what I also know is I don't know whether something about this conversation is the thing. But what I do know is that we take every single opportunity we can take to make sure that I will never bow the knee and lose my identity, because my identity isn't mine. My identity was implanted in me when the first cells of my being were stitched together. My purpose was instilled in me the first moment
that sperm hit the
cells came together.
Boom.
My life is not mine. My life is in service to the mission that I was put here to do. And every single one of the temptations that people have ever made, every one of the threats, every one of those experiences comes down to a simple thing. You can't take from me what I can't give you. This wasn't mine, so you can't take it from me. My mission is not my mission. It is a mission in which I'm playing my role. And each one of us, if we actually take that position in our life, there is no temptation that's even interesting. Because the only thing that I live for, and I've said this so many times I can't count, is hearing the following words at the very last breath. Well done, good and faithful servant. I entrusted you with a little, and you made more. And I'll tell you what, if every single one of us can take a moment and just reflect on our life and say, are we prepared? Are we prepared to say, that's our reward? Our reward is not palaces, not gold streets, not anything else. Our reward is to hear our name, David, well done. That's it. and you can put a fork in me and I'm done.
Beautifully said. It really comes down to that is you choose the mission and then it doesn't matter. The system's a joke. Once you see it's a lie, it's like, why do they sell out? God's right there.
Exactly right.
Doctor, thank you so much.
Alex, we're never going to stop.
Glad you finally were here. I apologize the time I left when you're supposed to come on. It was nothing about you. I had a family crisis that day. God bless you. Everybody should follow you right now at davidmartin.world. God bless you. We taped this on Tuesday night. We're airing it on the Wednesday show. Make this go viral, folks. It's important. God bless. Great job, brother. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.